Okay, welcome to the Launch One podcast. I'm Mason Springer, and our guest today is Aaron Hepler from the In Camp podcast. He's got a really cool show going on. Big whitetail hunter. I've known him for several years now. Great guy, super knowledgeable. I'm really excited for this conversation, and glad we got together, Aaron. What have you
Yeah,
been
for
doing
sure.
for whitetail lately?
Dude, I'm pretty excited about the season. I'm like, I hung a couple cameras, got some stuff ready, but really, honestly, it's more about the conversations than anything right now, man. I'm trying to get all these episodes in before the season starts, and so I can kind of not ignore the podcast, but kind of take a little bit of a seat back during the fall. Started hanging cameras sometime in August. I did some summer scouting. Some of my favorite areas were hammered with sign, which is kind of abnormal for them. So pretty excited about that. Got a couple good bucks on. Most of our cameras are SD card cameras, so checked a few cards, have a couple good bucks on. So man, I'm excited for the whitetail. I'm excited for the whitetail season. I've got 10 tags this year. I'm ready to fill the freezer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I've been recording some too. I'm thinking about dropping two a week just to get through some of the ones that I've recorded already, and just get them out there before whitetail season commences. Here in Ohio, our season starts the 28th, I believe, somewhere around there, September.
Mhm.
So we're closing in on that 2 week mark, somewhere around there. It's really coming in close.
Yeah, we open a special regs on Saturday. So I just picked up a farm this year that a friend of mine needs some serious help with crop damage. So she asked us to come down to this farm and kill a couple things this year. So got a couple guys that I'm hoping I can get there and kill a few does for her and stuff. But I think the big issue is raccoons. We're gonna have to take care of that too.
Oh, I do not like raccoons. I mean, they are always like unplugging cables from my trail cameras and just, I mean, it is such a pain.
Yeah, for sure. We actually did some predator hunting on the farm already, and killed a few coyotes. With thermals and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I checked some cameras there last week, and there is a pile of does. Not too much in the way of bucks. There's one 6 pointer that is well over 110 inches. He's pretty big for a six. So maybe if he shows up, I might shoot that one. But there's just the pictures of all the raccoons are it's wild. I mean, there's like there's pictures of 6 or 7 raccoons just piling past the cameras at different times. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Gonna have to do a lot of that in October, end of October, November when they cut the corn and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. My house is actually down in a river bottom, and we'll put a camera out in the backyard. And I mean, there's all kinds of critters that come past there: coyotes, foxes, coons, possums. I mean, every critter you
yeah,
can think of comes by there.
yeah. Uh, so what do you have going on? You got anything good yet?
Well, I just came down off the hill, moved a camera from one location, and it was kind of it's like a harvest hole. I mean, it is a hole right in the side of the hill, and I mean, it's probably 50, 60 yards across, and I had a camera like right down in the hole. It's kind of like a mature buck spot, kind of hidden.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wasn't getting the buck activity I was expecting in that location. So, but I do know that there are or have been some bucks there during the rut. I've never run a camera there this time of the year. So I ended up moving it up on the hill a little bit into kind of a hayfield up on top.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that I'm able to get some more mature buck activity up there in that hayfield. I'm thinking that they might summer somewhere over on the neighbors and then, hit that field at night, maybe run around. I don't know. But that's kind of my plan. We'll get some inventory, just doing a little check there.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so I've seen you at a couple different places, one of which is the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg. Where are you from, though? I really don't know.
I'm actually only about 45 minutes from Harrisburg. So
Okay.
born and raised in PA. I'm an intensive care nurse out here. Grew up in the outdoor space, man. I've been hunting and fishing for as long as I can remember. I am a strong advocate that bluegills are definitely the gateway drug to hunting and fishing.
Yeah, that is definitely the truth. I know I met your daughter at the Harrisburg Outdoor Show, and I know she loves the outdoors as well.
Yeah.
And that's really awesome to see people
Well,
bringing up their kids
well,
in it.
funny story. My wife said that if I said yes to coming on your podcast, then you'd have to agree to take my daughter on a date one day. So,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's funny. I can't. She's probably a few
she's
years younger
only
than me.
she's only 10.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah, I
well,
figured.
we can talk about it when they're in their 20s.
Yeah, yeah, at least that's funny. Yeah, that was a good time at the Harrisburg show. That was really a. I mean, it's a cool show. That's one of the largest in the country, isn't it?
It is. There's like 250,000 people through the doors through the week, I think. It's a long show. It's 9 days. The last 2 or 3 years that we were there with the Exodus guys, I think I did 8 days. I usually went home in the middle of the week because my little girl missed me too much most of the time. So did
Yeah,
8 days with them most often. And I think the last one they were at, they actually had something going on. They had to leave a day early.
yeah, yeah. I do remember. Back to the nursing. I think that's pretty cool. Being a nurse and then hunting on the side. What's your schedule look like with work during the hunting season?
Yeah, so this is one thing about working in healthcare that's kind of worthwhile. Healthcare it's a good job, right? You get really good benefits, you get paid well, you get a good amount of vacation time, and I only have to work 3 days a week. The job kind of sucks on a lot of days, but you kind of get yourself through it, remembering like, hey, you're doing something good for people, you're making a difference somehow, and like ultimately those perky things kind of smooth things over as far as nursing goes. Physicians are different, they're busy all the time, but that's kind of like a standard as far as bedside nursing goes, is 3 12-hour shifts, a lot of kind of different jobs in the hospital, or maybe 4 10s or something like that to get you to 40 hours. But it really affords a lot of time. I can take 2 days off and have a week and a half, 2 weeks off, if I schedule myself right. And most nursing places are self-scheduling or something like that, so it's kind of a worthwhile job when kids are thinking about, hey, I want to be going to college soon, I'm going to be thinking about these things I want to do. It truly is a skill that you need college for. There's a lot of things that you don't really need college for. You can go to vocational schools because those kinds of jobs are really needed. But nursing is kind of, you have to know what you're doing, and it really is like I said, if you like being in the outdoors, it is a perfect job for affording a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's so
know.
that's my thing on it.
Yeah, I know the line of work that Dad's in. He's able to kind of alter his schedule the way he needs during hunting season.
Yeah,
I know, he goes on elk hunts every year. He's able to take off about 2 weeks for that. I know that's probably his favorite time of the year is elk hunting.
yeah,
But yeah, that's having a flexible schedule is definitely important for a bow hunter.
yeah. The other cool thing about it is you can go to some kind of accelerated program and get your RN diploma and start working right away. And most hospitals that you'll work in now, if you work at the bedside, you might owe them a year, between a year and 3 years, but they'll pay for almost everything you need to get your bachelor's degree in nursing after that, which kind of opens the doors for you to do things later in life, like if you want to do case management or not be quite so close to the bedside or whatever. That's what that can afford you, but you get those kind of perks in a place like that. So
Yeah. So what's your day-to-day look like from commute to getting back home when you're on the job?
I'm about somewhere between 35 and 40 minutes from work. So I work 7A to 7P with a 30-minute lunch break. So I get home, I leave work at 7:30 and I get home around like 8:15. Usually I'm trying to record a podcast or something like that lately. My wife is a nurse as well, and she kind of just she transitioned to working at our daughter's school. She's in administration there now. She's the dean of students there, and kind of just getting her feet wet and that kind of stuff. So she's got a lot of stuff going on. It's kind of nice. We kind of just hang out. We got a little podcasting suite and get to spend some time together or whatever. Usually I just, kind of veg out when I get home, either eat dinner or do the podcasting thing or just hang out with the family. But not a lot of time to do stuff during your 12-hour work days. So as far as staying in touch with hunting on those days, I don't really get to shoot my bow on those days because like right now it's dark when I leave, it's dark when I get home. And the nice thing is as far as like fitness and keeping up with that part of things, like I have 4 days a week where I'm not working. So usually I try to do as far as like being in the gym to stay in shape for hunting and that kind of thing. Usually trying to do like some kind of 4 day split. When it gets closer to hunting season, I like to do kettlebell kind of stuff. So, you can maybe rip a 10-minute kind of thing before or after work. But I'm usually not working really hard with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know. For archery, I mean, I really only work out 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
A lot of that is just like basic dumbbell,
Mm-hmm.
upper body stuff, core, and then I hit a leg day here and there, and a lot of my just legs and hiking fitness is from just being out doing stuff on properties, running around. A lot of my fitness there comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
I probably should make some more time for something like running, getting that cardio up. I know that's really important for competitive archery, but I mean, it just makes life a lot easier, I'd say.
Yeah. I hate running. It's so, my wife is a runner. But I'm not really an athletic person, if I'm going to be completely honest. I started, like, got really into lifting heavy weights when I was like 17 or 18, and I did that for a long time. I was not really ever really a big kid. I was maybe 160 pounds until I was like 22, and then I really lifted heavy and I kind of blew up, and um, I'm like 120 or 220 right now. So the that can be hard though when you are doing that. If you are a public land deer hunter who's trying to go in really far and you're carrying that extra weight, like those are things to think about. I don't love weighing 220 when it gets to season. Right around 200 I'm pretty comfortable, um, with the cardio and with kind of like more stamina and that kind of thing for going in on those deep hunts. But I really like when it gets to a month or two out from hunting season. Usually I'm kind of sticking to kettlebells and that kind of thing so I can get, because I hate running so bad, then I can get like the weightlifting and the cardio in at the same time.
Yeah. My sister Kate, she runs cross country, and she's pretty
Okay.
good at that. And I really need to start tagging along with her on some of her runs. I mean, it's one of those things that I really haven't done, so I can't say if I like it or hate it. I know I do like hiking, but
Yeah.
running's a totally different game.
Running's a different animal. And I'll take my wife on hikes, and she can never understand because I'm like, I can go and go and go and go on a hike. And when it comes to a run, I'm like a mile in, I'm ready to die. But
Yeah.
I could hike for 15 miles and be fine. And she's like a mile into a hike and like, are we turning around yet? Like, what is happening? So I think it depends a lot on the terrain you're going over and all that kind of stuff. But, the fitness aspect is pretty important when it comes to hunting, especially, you could be not in shape to hunt too, but it does help you be a better hunter. And especially if you're really trying to get into places where other people aren't going, or trying to get creative, and maybe it's a place that's not deep in but it's kind of difficult to get into just because of whatever kind of obstacles you got to go through and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I know I'm kind of into staying healthy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not much for like lifting weights and stuff. Like I say, I might do something for 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
I think that your health is your number one asset. I mean, you being a nurse, I mean, you know all about that. But, I like to eat healthy. I like to just do healthy stuff. I don't need to go over the top, but I mean, it helps my performance in competitive archery. Helps a lot with hunting. I'm able to walk longer, farther, faster if I need. I do remember Dad. Kind of a quote from Dad and his elk hunting experience is he would rather hunt with a fat man that knows how to call an elk than a Olympic runner that doesn't know how to call. So he has
Uh-huh.
said that, which is kind of contradictory. I think that fitness is important, just for all around life, but there's definitely other things to hunting as well, though.
Yeah, I mean, your dad, you're wrong, man. You could be a good hunter and not be in shape. and still do really, really well. There are important things to learn about hunting outside of fitness, and I think we kind of just ended up talking about this mostly because we're talking about work and kind of what my kind of routine is after that. The fitness to me is important because I want to do this for as long as I possibly can. So if I'm an 80-year-old fat man, I probably won't be able to hunt anymore. But if I'm an 80-year-old fit guy, I might still be able to. And it
Yes.
might not be to the extent that I am now, but when I'm 80, I don't want to look back and be like, man, maybe I should have stayed in shape because I could be out, at that point I might just be hunting with my bird dog or whatever it happens to be. But that's the important, we don't have to talk a whole lot about that, but that's kind of the important part of that to me, is that kind of thing. I don't actually really talk about this too much because I'm not like, I don't want to act like I'm a fitness buff. I'm not. I just kind of, do what I can when I can.
Yeah, I think that I'm kind of where you're at, where when I'm 80, I don't want to be looking back, in regret, saying, "Man, I wish I would have stayed in shape, or I wish I would have ate better," whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there might be things that you get to that age and still can't, even though you tried really hard to get there. But I want to make sure that I knew I did everything I could to get to that point and be okay.
yeah, I think that, just about anything in life, the pride's kind of in the preparation, no matter the
Mm-hmm.
outcome. For archery, I shoot so much, and when I go to a tournament, it's like whatever happens, happens. I know that I tried like as hard as I possibly could. I did all that I could to, do well. And a lot of the times that ends up being rewarding for me. I end up doing well at that tournament or accomplishing my goal. And then other times it doesn't. But even then, I've never walked away from a tournament unhappy at how I performed. I think that I've always performed at a level that was kind of expected. I knew that I put in the work and my results would kind of match that.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed, man. What do you have going on for this hunting season? You going anywhere?
So I was kind of throwing around the idea of going on an elk hunt with Dad here in September, and I ended up kind of putting that away because I'm going to end up taking a couple more trips for archery.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm just going to hang around in Ohio for whitetail season. Now, that being said, I've put in a lot of work this year in making sure that my whitetail hunt is good. I definitely dedicated some resources and time to that. And my goal is to kind of harvest multiple deer because I need to fill the freezer, but get that done early season. That's my goal this year. Seems like the last couple years I found myself hunting into December, even January, and I'm like, man, I really need to like put the bow down, or really need to put the hunting down and pick the bow up and start shooting, getting ready for competition season. It's always kind of a struggle for me that time of year. Do I keep hunting? Do I not? But this year my goal is to get done with it kind of early in the season. That way I can spend my November, December shooting target stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. Man, the thing I'm really excited about this year. They made a couple different changes. So I'm going to be hunting, like I said, the special regs area that I haven't. It's not very far from me, but I've never really spent a whole lot of time hunting down in that area. So I'm hoping to knock a couple. I have 2 doe tags for that area, and obviously a buck. I have the buck tag is statewide. So hoping to kind of go down there, kill 2 does to knock the cobwebs off, get an arrow through something, so I can have a little bit more confidence in shooting the buck. I get buck fever pretty bad. So in the last couple of years, it's really it's kind of really affected my performance in shooting bucks. I've put a couple real big bucks in front of me and messed up, right? Either missed or one of them I hit. Well, actually, 2 of them I hit, but I'm trying to kind of combat that, and I think does is a really good way of just getting reps shooting an animal.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a good way to do it. For me shooting competition archery, it's helped so much with, the buck fever aspect. I think that, well, if you listen to the podcast previous of this with Jake Hofer, I kind of talk about how I deal with buck fever in the
Mm-hmm.
stand. Believe it or not, I've never shot a deer with a compound bow,
Really?
which I have also never drawn on a deer with a compound bow. I've hunted for 2 years now, and 2 years with a compound, maybe even 3. 3 seasons. I don't know, but I've never bent the string on an animal with my compound bow, or a deer at least. But I always, whenever there's a deer in front of me, whether it's a doe or whatever, I always like run that scenario through my head and get the bow ready like I'm about to shoot it. And a lot of times, I'll hear rustling behind me or whatever and grab the bow, and I'll believe that it's a buck that I want to shoot, or whatever the situation. But I mean, it's important, I think, like you said, to practice on whatever situation's in front of you, even if you don't intend to shoot that animal.
Yeah, I think there's times where you get really intentional about things. I remember the first buck that I killed with my bow. Mason, I don't know how many bucks I had missed before that, but it was a lot. I probably missed somewhere between 8 and 10 bucks before I killed one with a bow. I killed a doe with my bow when I was 14. It was my first deer with a bow. And I made a perfect shot. Like, first deer I ever drew back on, first deer I ever killed with a bow, made a perfect 15-yard shot on her. Back then, the legal limit for weight for drawing a bow was 30 pounds, and I was a little 12-year-old, or a little 14-year-old too. And I could barely draw 30 pounds. So I killed this deer with an Easton aluminum arrow and a 3-blade Wasp 90 grain broadhead. And 15 yards, I was in a Loggy Bayou tree stand, and that arrow passed completely through that deer. When I checked the weight of my bow, it was like 28 pounds, right? So it's pretty amazing what a bow can do. But you have this kind of focus. Like, I was so intent on killing a deer that I was more worried about, in that moment, I can remember being more worried about watching and being ready for when that shot was appropriate versus there's a deer in front of me, there's a deer in front of me, there's a deer in front of me, And then, you start to care about things a little more and start to count your chickens before the eggs hatch. And then I do a little bit better with buck fever if I have more time to think about it, which sounds kind of silly. Like, it seems like something that you should be able to, if it happens really fast, you should be able to handle it better because it didn't happen yet. But I get like an immediate, like, holy crap, there's a buck, as soon as I see one. So I remember missing all these deer and being like, this next one, I'm gonna kill that thing. And this deer, like, I watched it for a long time at 15 yards because it was behind all kinds of schmegma in the bushes, And when it finally came out, I had calmed myself down enough that all I could think about was putting an arrow through its lungs instead of there's a 10-point buck in front of me,
Yeah.
And I made a perfect shot on that deer. He went like 40 yards. Fast forward some time, I hit a deer. In 22, I hit a deer. I killed an elk that year. I came home, had a pretty good whitetail season. It was October 30th or 29th. And I watched a couple small bucks chase some does up a ridge. And I had a bigger deer come in and kind of like cut their trail. And I could see him, and I'm like, man, he's like 100 yards away. And I thought I'd never get that deer in, but I snort wheezed at him, and he came kind of trotting down the hill towards me, And I'm like, I didn't even have the bow in my hand, and I'm like doing one of these, like, oh, I gotta get, like kind of unreal. This deer is coming to a snort wheeze on public land, not very far from the truck at all, like not very far at all. And you're thinking, like, this is not real,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like maybe somewhere between 120, 130 inch 8-pointer probably. And he comes in, and he was on my weak side on a saddle, which is, to me, weak side is basically like shooting behind the tree out of a tree stand. It's not like your most ideal shot, and on your side that you don't want to out of a tree stand, right? So it's something that I can do. It's something that you can do out of a tree stand or saddle, whatever. I went to shoot off this weak side shot, and I was so jazzed up that I didn't see these two branches, big branches, hanging over his vitals. And I shot, and I remember stick just kind of, and the arrow went sideways and hit him in the back leg. It was like basically hit him in the knee. And, everybody was like, well, you better go look in case you hit him in the artery. He might not go that far, that kind of thing. And, I remember talking to Chad Sylvester on the phone, being like, dude, where? Because he knows probably more about blood trailing than anybody. So I'm, taking tips from Chad, and he's like looking at the blood. He's like, I don't know, man. That's a lot of blood for a hit in the knee, And I tracked this deer. I could only get blood for like 100 yards, and I looked for, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours to try to find another drop, and kind of grid searched some stuff and couldn't find this deer. And I was pretty mad, man. I was like, I think I had missed a doe already that year, and I was like, what the heck? Like, you kill this elk, and now you can't even shoot a whitetail. Like, what's wrong with you? So after I had my pity party, I had time to go out November 8th, and I'm like, I'm just going back, and I'm going to see if he comes back around, right? So that deer didn't show up, but around 8:30 in the morning, a really nice 8-pointer was coming up the ridge. And 110-inch deer can make me happy, especially when I've messed up like that. I'm ready to go. So this deer's coming up the ridge, and I remember seeing him and looking at his rack and be like, all right, now he's a shooter, I'm done with the rack. And I just remember being like, heart shots only, dude, heart shots only. And like you said, when we were having a chat on my podcast, burning a hole through that spot is probably the most important thing you can do. And I literally looked at where I thought that heart was, and I made a 6-yard shot in that deer. And he went about 60 yards, turned around, started running towards me, and fell over at like 45.
Oh.
And I was like, I had to take a minute, because then the buck fever kicked in, and I was shaking. And
yes,
I called my wife, and I called my buddy, and he ended up coming out on a bike and helped me get this deer out. It was kind of, like I said, it was not very far from the parking lot, so it was kind of easy to get there via some main roads and stuff, and packed this deer up. And my wife came out, and she got to see the whole thing, and so that was it was a pretty cool experience, man. Really loved it. But the important thing about killing your first deer with a bow is kind of like that focus. Like, you really have to take it off the antlers, and you really, 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 when I see a deer coming, I know it's going to be in range. I'm already holding that thing. I'm like, just imagining myself holding this thing up and being excited about that.
Yeah.
And I've been heartbroken by that so many times, and you just really, really can't do that until it's happening.
So with competitive archery, there are a lot of situations that I find myself in that are comparable to a big buck coming in and making that shot. Whether it's like on the Vegas shoot down stage with 5,000 people watching you, and you have to hit a penny almost every time at 20 yards. I mean, the pressure is real, just like when you're hunting. I think that, just kind of like I talked about, the pride is in the process. I think that when you're trying to make that shot, focusing on the process versus outcome is very important, like you said. Instead of focusing on that big rack walking towards you, focus on drawing that bow back, making a good shot, imagining where you're going to put the pin, where the deer's going to be when you shoot. One strategy I use in competitive archery to kind of help with those shots where it's super high pressure and you got to make a good shot is I'll do kind of a rehearsal through my head of a perfect shot. So before and after every shot, I kind of like vividly imagine a shot in my head that is perfect. So basically all that is I've got a shot process, and I will stare at the target, run that shot process through my head, maybe take 5 seconds doing it. Then I will pick up the bow, run that process again, and that might take another 10 seconds or whatever. And then after that shot goes, I'll run that same process again a third time. So every shot is really like 3 shots, 2 of which are perfect shots, right? Because I imagined it in my head, and I imagined it going right in the middle. So for me, when I imagine those perfect shots and I do it like so vividly, there's lots of strategies to helping yourself imagine it vividly, because that's very important. But once you get that, I think that you can transfer it over to whitetail hunting, imagining that perfect shot before it happens. That way you kind of trick your mind into believing that it's totally possible. Like there's nothing that can go wrong.
Yeah.
I think that confidence is a big factor of buck fever.
Yeah. I used to be a really, really good shot when I was younger. And, I hear a lot about people saying, oh, the more you shoot a bow, the worse you get. I don't think
Yes.
that's true, okay? But I think that you can take a lot of outside. So you were talking to me about fundamentals and how they can be different for everybody. And I think the fundamentals are what you learn, how you learn how to shoot a bow first. They're important. When I was a kid shooting a little plastic Jennings bow, I would draw that bow back, and my dad would tell me, now hold it on as hard as you can, and then just take a deep breath in and let half of it out and let it go. And then follow through. It for me is really important. And I could shoot a lot of stuff. Like I could shoot the leaf of a clover at freaking 20 yards at 8 years old. And I could do that for a long time. Like I was shooting before I went on that elk hunt, I was shooting, quarters at 75 yards with my bow. And then I went through this phase, man, where I could not hit a freaking thing. Like my group would be 5 inches apart at 20 yards all the time. Couldn't figure out why. Then you're like, is my bow off? What's wrong with the arrows? Like, what's going on here? And I literally put that bow down for a month, and I'm like, I ain't touching it. And I kind of came back to it and was like, you know what I did? I was reading all kinds of stuff about how to be a better shot with your bow. And you know what I didn't really need? I didn't need to know how to be a better shot with my bow.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, I was shooting 75 yards without even thinking about it. Never read an article about how to shoot a bow. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but if you're gonna open some can of worms. So expect to learn something and experiment, but then, don't let it hinder you from going back to what your original fundamentals were, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did this thing where I'm like, oh, I gotta do pin float and I gotta make sure I'm doing all this kind of stuff. And that's not how I shot, man. Like, I mean, I'm not like I don't like to jerk the trigger or anything, but I'm not like I don't shoot I shoot a trigger release, and that's how I've tried shooting other things, and they make it way worse. I've tried to shoot that little like hook. I don't even know what it's called. Just like a trigger release with a hook on it. I've tried to shoot back tension. I've tried to shoot all different kinds of stuff. Nothing really works for me except like how I've always shot. And I think that's important to remember. Now, something else that I did that could be wrong is like people, well, you should shoot at least 25 shots every day. I think if you're shooting competitively, lots of reps could be good and different cycles of your practice, right? And there's a time and a place to do that. If I'm in June, maybe that's a great time to make sure your equipment works. Your timing is right, your sights are right, your arrows are all functioning and flying together, that kind of thing. You're going to need to take a lot of reps to know all that kind of stuff. Sure, take a couple days where you do a lot of reps. But what is the most important thing about a shot with a bow? One shot.
Yes.
Right? When you're taking a shot at an animal, only the first one matters. If you're lucky, you might get a second one. Doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
So the important thing for me right now is if I get home, there's a little bit of light out left, I will run upstairs with my bow with one arrow, open the back door. I got a target out there at 20, 30 yards, and I will shoot one arrow. And I am sure to make sure that arrow counts every time.
Yes.
And what you talked to me about earlier is you're making, a lot of times in the woods, you're making quick shots. I'm either doing something where I'm like holding it, letting it back down, redrawing and shooting. Or I'm like, a quick shot, whatever it happens to be. But I want that one shot to count. And that's not like, I might shoot 3 or 5 after that if I have time. But I'm I have gotten into my head where if you are getting closer to the season, that is not the time to shoot a ton of reps because you kind of give yourself a little bit of grace. You know what I mean? I'm shooting like 3 to 5 arrows a couple times a week. And last year, the year before, I was shooting a lot, and that did not do me favors. The year prior to that, I was kind of in this mindset where the closer I get to season, it didn't mean I practiced less, but I was taking less reps.
Yeah.
And maybe I would space them out a couple days, you know?
Yeah, so I've got kind of two comments here. One of which is the symptoms you're giving me. I'm kind of like a archery doctor. The symptoms you're giving me are target panic, target panic, target panic, which we'll talk about that in a second. I'll give you the crash course of what my thoughts are. But yeah, I think that you're exactly right on the number of reps. I mean, I've been doing a series lately, hole in one with the bow and arrow. And it's basically making a perfect shot. I've got an eighth of an inch of tolerance basically at 20 yards that I need to be able to hit. First shot of the day, zero practice. So I've been doing this for the last week, and I'm probably going to do an episode once we're done with this podcast here. But basically, just shoot an arrow, first arrow of the day, and do that every day on film until I hit that hole in one. So it's kind of a high pressure shot. You know, being filmed each day is a little bit of pressure there, and I think that is really good going into bow season, deer season. I think that those low reps, high quality low reps, I think that's very important.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that 3 to 5 reps. I mean, I think that the average bow hunter shouldn't need to shoot more than 20 shots a day. I think that if you're going much over that, even during the off season, there's going to be things that you're doing wrong. I mean, whatever it is, like I said, if you're not focusing on all those little minute details like a target archer is, inevitably you're just gonna fall into a rut, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, and you're right. There was a time where I think that was target panic. That time where I went from shooting a quarter at 75 yards to the time where now I have a 5-inch group at 20 yards. What the heck happened? I did go through a period of what I would say is target panic because I was changing releases and, you know, reading all these different articles about how I should be shooting and what I can do to fix whatever's happening, and there really wasn't anything wrong. So I got back to my mental state before and like, hey, I'm not a person who likes to let the pin float. I can't do it. I've tried doing that and I miss horribly every time. I can try to burn a hole through the target or whatever it happens to be, but I need to hold my bow still because I think my pin float is not really pin float. I think it's me being like, well, that's pin float, just let it go. And I'm like probably out here like, what is going on, you know? Instead of actually kind of just going back to my own fundamentals. And I can shoot. I'm not like I'm a pretty good archer, you know. When it comes to the 20, 30, 40 yards that I practice at, I can shoot a dime if I want to most of the time. And that's what I want to be when I'm talking about deer hunting, and especially when it comes to that one shot, that's the one I want to make every time when I open that back door.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, so one thing that I've heard a lot is I shot way better when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
That is one thing that, I mean, I guess that I started out, I mean, I've been shooting since I was 4 or 5 years old. And, you know, Dad having that competition background, he started me out with that surprise shot from the beginning. So it was always a slow squeeze, ignore what the pin's doing down there. As long as it's on the target, you're good. And it was always that for, I mean, up until today. And anytime I would stray away from that path, I was always brought right back in by Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was very important. I think that everybody is able to start off with a nice controlled shot. And even if it's when they start out, all right, let me rephrase this actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think that when a shooter is starting out, they are getting up there, putting the pin on the target, and then squeezing the trigger, punching the trigger, whatever it is, and they're shooting, and it's going to go right where they want it. The theory of you get worse the more you shoot is correct, but I like to word it different. You get better the more you shoot. So basically what's happening is with a bow and arrow, you've got this big explosion that happens like right in your face. And there's a lot of other guys that say the same thing that I do. You've got this big explosion that's happening right in your face. As a human being creature, I mean, your natural instinct is to like, whoa, there's a big explosion in my face, and give a little flinch, give a little jump. And as you shoot more, your like subconscious mind is able to predict that explosion better and better each time. So when you're first shooting, I've never seen somebody shoot for the first time and flinch prior to the shot. It's always, draw back, shoot, and then once they realize that it exploded in their face, that's when they flinch afterwards. If you flinch after the shot, it doesn't really matter. When you flinch before that arrow is released or during the release, that's when things go wrong. So as you shoot more, you're basically training yourself to kind of expect that flinch, that explosion. And the more you shoot, the sooner and sooner you're going to flinch. And eventually you're going to be flinching before you even get your finger on the trigger. I've seen guys with target panic so bad that, I mean, they raise their finger to put it on the trigger and they're already coming off the back wall or whatever it is. And there's where it's probably a good idea to take a 1 month break or whatever it is and kind of get that hard reset in. Your subconscious isn't trained. It kind of loses the thought that there's a big explosion about ready to happen. But that's kind of the root of target panic. It's just human instinct. Everybody has target panic. I have target panic. The best archers in the world have target panic.
Right.
We all just have it at different levels, and we all control it differently. Going back to your fundamentals, I think that as long as you have your fundamentals outlined and you know what they are, I mean, that's very important. One tip, like one thing that every bow hunter can do right now while they're listening to this podcast is grab a piece of paper, go on to notes in your phone, and write down things in your shot that you do that you believe are good. Maybe that's stand up straight, have good posture, draw it back slow, draw it back on target, anchor and sight in through your peep quickly. Whatever those parts of your shot that are good, that you like to do, write that down and be conscious of those things that you're doing. There's a lot of times where even other sports, basketball, golf, where you're making a shot and you don't know really what you're doing, but you're doing it. When you don't know what you're doing, it's hard to replicate it in a pressure situation. In practice, I mean, if you don't know all the motions you're moving, it's kind of irrelevant. Like you can just do it over and over and over. But when you get into the pressure situation, or maybe there's something a little bit different, it's an uphill shot, downhill shot, things typically go wrong. But if you know a lot of the parts of your process, it makes things a lot easier. So I would say write down the parts of your shot that you like, those fundamentals that you're talking about, and think about those every time you pick up the bow and go to shoot. Pick one of those fundamentals to focus on that session. And I think that can be really beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. So what are you working on in the whitetail woods? How are you going to kill that first deer?
So there's been a deer coming past the camera here for probably a month now. Back when he was just starting to grow, wasn't super impressive, and then he kind of blew up towards the end of growing season, and he's definitely a shooter now. Historically, Dad has been hunting for many, many years, and I think that he's killed many trophy deer, but I think he's only ever gotten one deer that he killed in the future on camera. We really don't run that many cameras, and the properties that we hunt are a lot of times they are rut spots, so there's a lot of traveling bucks moving through, deer that have never been on that property before. And so this is kind of my first year really playing the camera game. I guess some guys like it, some guys don't. I'm testing it out right now. I think it's definitely a good tool to use, but that's kind of what I'm working on right now, is learning to pattern these deer, what I'm looking for there. Dad's big on the moon stuff, and I've found some accurate results with that as well, which that's, I guess, a little bit controversial. I know Dad did a podcast with Chad Sylvester and Exodus on that. It's pretty interesting to listen to. He's got some good concepts there that I've found to be true.
I think there's something to it. I mean, if I'm going to put all my eggs in a basket, it's probably going to bank on the weather first.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, all right, if you're hunting a hot weather day, the moon might make a difference. You know what I mean? I actually think that probably is the bigger factor. You're looking at moon phase in a hot day where deer don't want to move, but they're in that cycle where they're supposed to. You know what I mean? So there's probably a lot to do along those lines too, maybe.
here's how I kind of rank it, and this is how Dad does it too. Weather is the number one thing that controls deer movement. If there's a big storm front coming in, especially during rut, you need to be in the stand. If it's hot outside, typically in Ohio, that is not good for deer hunting. Cold weather is good for deer hunting. Cold weather brings them to food sources and different stuff like that, bean fields, whatever it is. And it kind of encourages them to move, is what I found. So you've got weather is the top priority that controls deer movement. Then you've got time of year, right? So rut versus bedding feeding pattern. And then even below that is the moon. And I think that when you've got situations where it's a average day, like there's no major weather things happening, it is a bedding feeding pattern, that's when the moon really comes into play. When it's rut, that rut time of year, the moon doesn't affect deer near as much as a bedding feeding pattern, but that's what I've seen to be true.
I only smile and kind of giggle because I'm too dumb to figure the moon out, Mason. It's too complicated. Because I'm thinking about weather patterns and up and down thermals and which way the wind should be going. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should think about the moon. And then I try to learn about overhead and underfoot. And I'm like, I'm lost.
Yeah.
Your dad took some really good time to try to explain it to me. And while he was explaining all of it, we were all there was like 10 of us. We were all eating dinner. And Chad said something about the moon, and your dad started explaining to us about the moon. And I think every time I've met your dad, we've had a conversation about the moon.
Yeah.
I think he was at the show maybe 3 times while I was there. Anyway, we were talking about the moon, and your dad's telling us about the moon, and he's explaining about this phase of the year when the moon should be here, and I'm like, I don't know how many deer stories I heard today at the show, but I can't comprehend anything you're saying now.
It's a lot to take in. I mean, the basics are deer are typically feeding when the moon is either straight up or straight down, and then the moon phase plays a part of when it's straight up and straight down, like a quarter moon phase. It's going to be straight up and straight down in the evenings and mornings, and then on like new moon or full moon, it's going to be straight up and straight down in the middle of the day, middle of the night. And that's kind of the basics of it. There's a lot more to it than that. Dad has been playing this moon game for probably 20 plus years. I mean, every time
he definitely understands it. Your dad definitely understands it. There's no doubt about it.
He has got a well thought out I don't know if you consider a theory or whatever it is. It's one of those things, kind of like, have you ever heard of like witching sticks for finding like water pipes underground? The old timers used to do this, or like finding wells or springs. You take like 2 metal rods and hold them in your hands, and then when you walk over top of whatever it is, a hollow spot in the ground or a spring or pipe, the rods will cross. And it's like, as far as science goes, it's magic. Like, science does not explain that. That's one of the few things that science cannot explain. I think that the moon's relationship with wildlife is one of those things as well. I know Dad plans all of his hunts around the moon, whether that's elk, deer, and then we've even looked at how moon plays effect in like trophy fishing too.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I've definitely noticed that it's kind of easy for fishing because you can go on like multiple different fishing resources. I always use like the In Fisherman calendar, and they'll tell you what time is the best time to fish, and it's they base it on the moon, and it comes in a cycle. So, you'll end up having 4 or 5 really, really good days to fish. Quite honestly, it's generally pretty accurate. You're catching fish between those times that it says, and everything else around it is on the slower side. Not that you can't, when you find fish, you can catch fish.
Yeah.
It just might be, I feel like at those times, you could throw anything at them, and you will catch them. Outside those times, you're going to work harder to find them and work harder to throw something at them that they want to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of those things. It's kind of a hierarchy, just like deer. You got weather, then, what phase of the rut it is, and then moon's kind of at the bottom of that totem pole, but it does have an effect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think the other thing about weather is we talk about these giant temperature swings, and I think if you have stale weather for a few days, any type of weather change is a big one. So if you've got 65-degree mornings or even 50-degree mornings for 8 days in a row, and then the next morning is 45 degrees, man, you better be in that stand because that's a big difference. Maybe the temperature stays the same, but the wind switches directions. That's a big difference in stale weather. Any type of, if you have 3 to 5 consecutive days of the same weather pattern, and one thing in that weather pattern changes, it's on. You better be in a stand.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was Halloween last season. It was kind of like that. It was pretty stagnant. It was a warmer, like the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th of October. It was warmer outside. And then all of a sudden we got this cold front and big storms coming in. And I'm like, man, I'm going to miss the Halloween party, but I got to be in the stand. So I went to the stand that night, and it was an evening hunt. Like, it was really starting to roll in right at dusk. The wind started whipping up, and it was howling. And then earlier in the afternoon, getting closer to evening, that was kind of the prime time. There's a lot of deer movement. They're up and around. Those deer can sense the barometric pressure and stuff, and even humans can, and that plays a big part in the movement. But yeah, I think that big changes in the weather are super important.
Agreed.
So the big thing that kind of changed for me last season was property management. So kind of like what Jake does on his land podcast, Jake Hofer. I don't know if you've listened to his podcast much, but he's got some really good stuff on. I guess land management is the best way to put it. Land managing for whitetails, improving habitat. That has been a big part of um, my hunts the last couple years. I put in as much or more time improving habitat as I do actually hunting, and it has definitely made a substantial difference in what I've seen, even in a 1 year's time. So I think that's very important for the public land guy. Obviously, you can't be cutting down trees and stuff on national forest, but I think that being able to see those things, see those areas of better habitat, and have a good understanding for the forest is very important for a public land hunter. I actually just got back from a school trip. I believe we talked about this at the beginning here, and it was a forestry competition in Massachusetts. Last fall, our local FFA chapter through the high school, like the VOAG program, they have a forestry team. So there's maybe 16, 18 of us that go to the state competition, and then I think it's the second place team at state moves on to a competition called the Big E, and it is a huge forestry competition at I believe it's the third largest fair in the United States. It kind of represents all of the New England states out of Massachusetts. And it was really cool. We went and competed in that. We actually won the Big E.
Nice.
So that was really cool. What forestry is as a competition is you basically have to learn how to identify all of these different species of trees. You have to know how the wildlife interact with each of those species. You have to know so much about these different species of trees. You have to know about silviculture. That's the term for I believe the definition's the art of growing and harvesting trees. So, harvesting trees is just as important as planting trees. I think that's becoming a more well-known fact
Yeah, for
in
sure.
the world.
Yeah, I just talked about that yesterday with somebody on a podcast, how much, we talked on clear cuts.
Yeah. I think with that forestry competition, it gave me a good reason to learn how to understand the forest. And I will never walk into a forest again without looking at it totally differently. You can kind of walk in, and I'd say most people can say, oh yeah, I think that's an oak tree. I see some brush down here, I see this, that, but with the being able to identify those species, know what each species does, which species deer eat, which species they don't eat, I look at the woods totally differently now, and I think that it allows me to scout much better than I previously could, which plays into the public land factor. Turkey hunting, I turkey hunt a lot of public land, and scouting those turkeys, finding the turkeys, knowing which areas to send a call out into and which areas not to. I think that having that little bit of background knowledge is important.
Yeah, I agree, man. The forestry thing is huge, especially in the white, like you said, when you're talking about public land, you might have some states that plant a bean field that's kind of random, that doesn't really factor into your overall strategy. If everybody doesn't hunt it, it's not a, if you're like, let's say you're on a 10,000 to a 30,000 acre tract of public land and there's a 40-acre bean field on it, like that's not really that big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So not that deer aren't going to stop there and use it, especially if you got one that's not pressured and it's early in the season or something, you might have deer using that ag that you can pattern. But in these big pieces, Ohio's got a lot of public. You're hunting a lot of Ohio, and I'm here in PA, and we have like 4 million acres of public land. Most of it's big tracts, man. And if there is a clover plot on one, it's because they made a clear cut and they needed a place to keep the logs, and then they had to plant it when they were done. So, those things get mowed down pretty quick, and you're talking, there's a lot of deer living on a big tract of timber. They're mowing that stuff down in no time. So the forestry aspect is super important to know. Like, A, if you don't know the stuff, you should probably go learn some of it. But B, even better, observe what the deer are liking in that area. I notice a lot of, when they make clear cuts, deer really love to hone in on things that kind of pop up after tires run over it. You get all these like successional like weeds that kind of grow in this area, like pokeweed. Deer love pokeweed berries, and maybe some funguses or mushrooms that they like to chew on and that kind of thing, until the cut starts, you start having those little oak shoots and things that come up. But a lot of times a lot of your first stuff that comes up after a clear cut is maple, right? Deer don't not like maple. They'll eat it. It probably will be at a certain time, but there's a certain time where those things are like 3 to 4 inches with those little tender leaves, man. They go nuts on stuff like that. And it doesn't matter what it is. Sassafras, birch, aspen, maple. If it's small and tender, they will eat the crap out of that.
So you're probably in a different geographic like area than me. I've got a lot more ag. Where I'm at, it's kind of a 50-50 ag woods mix. Sounds like there's a lot more woods where you're at.
Yeah, PA is a lot of farms, but when it comes to the public, it's almost all timber. So there is ag on some. You might get a tract of public that has a decent amount of ag. We stock pheasants here, so they make switch fields and bean fields and corn fields and that kind of thing. But when you're talking 4 million acres of public land, there's probably, I wouldn't even say a quarter of that is ag. Every ag above and beyond that is all private. And PA, you've driven through PA. It's loaded with farms.
Yes.
But most of them are private.
So in Ohio, in my area, I might be wrong, but I don't think that a deer would eat a maple sapling. And the reason behind that is there's a lot more desirable stuff around in this area. We did a group opening, I guess is a term for it, maybe a 2-acre plot of woods that we clear cut and then just let it grow up for a summer. And what most people would call weeds, and they kind of are weeds, but deer have been browsing that 2 acres of weeds like I've never seen before. I mean, just about every plant in there has been nipped off the top, and they've been eating it. Now, when you say you're talking about like the little maples and stuff being eaten, I know that in the big woods of southern Ohio, where it's 95% forest, a lot of that is, I would consider somewhat mismanaged. There's a lot of big woods, I'll call it, which maybe mismanaged isn't the right word. It's mismanaged for wildlife. Maybe it's not mismanaged for timber or aesthetic purposes. But if you're managing for wildlife, I think how a lot of the public forests are now is not ideal. You kind of get the park effect is what a lot of people call it. You've got these nice, big, mature trees, full canopy. It looks beautiful, but then you look down at the ground and all you see is dead leaves and maybe some greenbrier sprinkled around. In southern Ohio, when it's 95% big woods like that, those deer are eating anything they can get their teeth on. Like, they're eating greenbriers. They're eating, in really hard winters, they'll even dig up and eat roots of certain trees. So I think that managing a forest for wildlife is important. I think it can be done and should be done in kind of in sync with managing for other things like aesthetic purposes, timber value, whatever other reasons there might be. I think it's very doable. I think that can be done through methods like prescribed burns, clear cuts, select cuts. There's actually a study done by, it could have been Tennessee State University. Dr. Craig Harper is my guess. I could be wrong. But they took a forest, and I'm pretty sure it was like an oak ridge or something, and they basically collected all of the acorns that these oaks produced, and they were all big, tall, mature oaks, closed canopy, and I'm going to make up a number here. They got 50 pounds per acre of acorns. Then they opened up the canopy, so cut down maybe a third or half of those mature oaks, and 1 to 2 years later, those canopies were open to far more sun, so you're clearing out 40 to 50% of that canopy, letting in a lot more sunlight. And if my numbers are correct, those trees produced somewhere around 40 or 50% more acorns.
Yeah,
that hard mass.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article on clear cuts, and I've written a lot of articles on clear cuts, but the study was 50%.
Is that right? Yeah.
It's insane how much more food one clear cut, like a 300-acre cut, produces just an incredible amount of food. Yes. And it's different than ag because it lasts so much longer.
Year round. Those native species, yeah, they're around all the time. One number that really impressed me was that big woods, right, that we're talking about with big, mature, closed canopy. Mm-hmm. Look around, all you see is greenbriers. I think the numbers were 50 pounds per acre, roughly, of food that's edible to deer in a woods like that. Clear cut it and let it grow up for a year, you've got somewhere around 1,500 pounds per acre of food. Yeah, so for me, there's a lot of guys that run so much feed during the year. And I mean, they will run tons of feed and try to feed these deer herds where they could go in and cut an acre of mature timber and let it grow up. And you've got 1,500 pounds of food right there that's free. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot more, natural. It's wild stuff, probably a lot more nutrition than something like corn or whatever people feed deer. But I think that there's a lot of natural benefits to clear cuts or any timber harvesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially for the public land hunter, that's kind of a really good area to focus because, like I said, if you're trying to look at the little log landing of the little clover plot you got on thousands of acres of public land and you look at a 300-acre cut, well, all those deer might go mow that little thing down over there for a couple minutes, and then they're going to be in that clear cut for the however long till the next year that clover grows back,
Yeah. One thing that we kind of focused on in the area that we're at is a lot of it is competition with the neighbors. Mm-hmm. So we're basically small parcels, lots of small parcels around here, and deer are always jumping from neighbor to neighbor to neighbor.
Yeah.
And our goal is to make sure that the deer spend as much time as possible on the land that we hunt instead of the neighbors. The more time they spend on our hunting land, the more time or the less chance that the neighbors have on, killing those deer. And a lot of times, like, I think that Dad and I are some of the better managers in the area when it comes to mature deer. We're very fortunate that we have good neighbors that are also conscious of that. But there's always somebody that is taking that, 2-year-old buck or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And in some cases, if it's a kid or whatever, then that's totally fine, by all means. But like if you've shot a dozen deer in your life, and in our area at least, shooting a 100-inch, 110-inch buck in that scenario is not necessarily a great thing to do. Which public land, that's a totally different game. 110-inch deer is a trophy.
Well, man, it just depends because most of the time I'm after the ones that are, 130 to 150. But there's a certain time. I am not a believer in the don't pass up on the first day what you would shoot on the last day. Like, I'm not really a believer in that. I get to the end of the year, and if I haven't filled a tag, that means there's no meat in my freezer, and that's really important to me and my family. And if it means I'm shooting a small buck, man,
yeah,
I want to let it rip. Especially when I get to the gun season, I'm like, I don't care.
You can't eat the antlers, as they say.
I don't care. I killed a couple nice bucks in the last few years, but man, I killed this real little one 3 or 4 years ago now in rifle season. I was like, he walked out, and I'm like, he's got 3 points on one side. So, it was like a 65-inch 7-pointer, but I was not about to, I was not up, man.
Yeah, yeah, you're in a totally different situation
Yeah.
than the area that I'm at, but that's good. It's always good to hear hunting stories like that. I know a buddy of mine. I mean, he hunts public land hard, and I mean, a lot of times you won't see a deer for weeks, and when a buck, no matter the size, walks in front of you, it's like, I mean, it's like boom, like I'm shooting that thing. I know that's for me with turkeys. I hunted a turkey with a bow. Let's see, not well. I have hunted with a bow the last 2 seasons. The first season last year, I hunted all 4 weekends with a bow, and I had some really good encounters, saw some great birds, but was not able to connect. So on the last day season, I brought a shotgun, and man, I saw that gobbler stick his head up over the hill, and it was actually a Jake, and I'm like, man, I've hunted hard. I want to kill a bird. And, so I took that Jake, and I mean, I was super proud of that bird. I hunted a lot for that. And in a lot of situations, I think that you should be proud of any harvest.
Yeah, I agree, man. I killed a 108 or 110-inch 8-pointer on public last year at really my first deer camp. Growing up, we had like a little farm, not a little farm, but a friend's farm that we would go to and kind of do the camaraderie thing. But I never like went north and did like stay in somebody's cabin and whatever. I went with some buddies this year, and uh, you know, there wasn't many buck tags in camp because most people had killed their buck in archery. So there were 3 buck tags in camp, and we filled 2 of them. My buddy's uncle killed one, and I killed one pretty far back in public, a couple hours from my house. I'm staying up there at that camp in the snow, and it was such a fun experience that it was really more about the experience. The deer was great. I was super happy with the deer, and body size, that deer was probably the biggest deer I've killed as far as a weight goes. But the rack is, not something to write home about, but man, I'm super proud of it. Even though it was with a gun, and it's just like, I'm just proud of the experience that I got to have doing it.
Yeah.
And I got to share it with friends, and we packed it out and did the whole quarter it in the field thing. And it's just that's really what it's about. It's about the stories, and it's about, we can talk about strategy and all this stuff. Like, it's all very interesting. I love all of that. Like, I love talking strategy, but I love remembering why we do it. And the important thing is the experiences and the memories, and when the opportunity is right, getting to share it with somebody else, because bow hunting is kind of a solo sport. Deer hunting in general is, but there is some aspect where we come back to the table and we get to talk like you and I are talking now. That's the most important part, man.
Yeah.
Me making an impact on somebody else coming into the sport to teach their kids to love public land, to love deer the way that I love deer. That's important to me. And that's kind of what I want to see moving forward is, yeah, we need to share the strategies and the, hey, this is what worked kind of stuff. But the important thing is building the memories and passing them on, because I don't think when you hear, when I would hear my grandfathers talk about hunting and their Woolrich way back in the day, they didn't really have a strategy. The strategy was, find some tracks and go sit in the woods, and camp was their strategy. And I think there's like a fine balance. Like, we have really honed in on how to be a successful hunter, and it's important to share that stuff. Like, sometimes success in the woods really matters, because it's kind of part of what keeps you interested. Like, if you go out in the woods for 10 years, you really got to love just being in the woods without shooting a deer. You know what I mean? For me, I could do that, but I've been doing it for a long time. Somebody that's new to it or just getting into it, if they don't have a whole lot of success in 3 years, or they're not having encounters because they're having a hard time finding deer or shooting squirrels or whatever it is, man, they might be out. And then there's
Yeah, yeah. Well, so to wrap it up, what is a message that you would leave to people like people of my dad's generation. There's a lot of kids my age that have parents that hunt, but the kids don't hunt. And I think part of it is because kids entertain themselves much differently than they did like when you were a kid. A lot of it is, a video game, social media, whatever it is. And they don't really have that connection to hunting as much as your generation did. It's going to be my guess. What's a message that you can leave with people of your generation to help get their kids into the outdoors, into hunting, kind of like you did with your daughter?
So here's the thing. Without trying to get too deep into the weeds on this, Mason, it's technology and social media and iPads and screens, they're not going anywhere. And there are a lot of things that can distract from hunting and fishing in the outdoors now, right? And I'm not telling you to embrace all the stuff, because all the stuff is really what's causing problems in the world at the current time, right? But what I would say is be careful about the things that you want to get rid of. Crossbows are something that comes up all the time. I am not a crossbow user. I own one. I bought it for my daughter, who has not really shown a whole lot of interest in shooting a deer with a crossbow yet, but she loves to go watch the dog chase birds. But here's the thing. When she wants to pick that thing up, I'm going to encourage it. Because even though I don't prefer crossbows, and I would like if nobody hunted with crossbows, if my kid is going to hunt with a crossbow and it puts her outside and it puts other kids outside, then I want them to use a crossbow. If a cell cam, getting excited about getting pictures on your cell phone, is what's going to get you excited about going to walk outside, then I don't care if you use a cell cam. I use cell cams. I don't use them like everybody does, but, the same way maybe. But my point is there's a lot of technology that's coming around and things that are catching kids' interests that, hey, if it's going to get them outside, there's some things that you don't necessarily need to embrace, but you need to understand them, because they're not going anywhere anyway. And if you just complain about it all the time, you're losing the opportunity to be outside for your kid. And they're going to be stuck inside on a screen all the time. So embrace some of the technology. And if you really have a moral, ethical problem with something, instead of talking about it online, send the comment to your state. Because they're the only ones who can really make the difference.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that came up a lot here a few months ago with the public land stuff out west and all that. But yeah, I think that's a good spot to leave it. I think that's a really good message. Yeah, but I appreciate you coming on, Aaron. It was a great
Anytime,
podcast.
Mason. Yep.
Yeah, glad I got to film a little clip with you. Hopefully we'll get to do a full podcast on your podcast at some point.
Yeah,
but I really enjoyed it.
Filling that first tag.
Yeah, hopefully that'd be great. Awesome. Cool. Well, I appreciate it, Aaron. Let's wrap it up here, buddy. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Talk to you later.